Hey everybody, AJ here, and welcome back to the Eagle Ray channel. This is the much more informal version of the Eagle Ray channel. Normally we have a 10-minute video coming out weekly about everything from solar to batteries to trolling motors, anything electric you might want to do on your boat. But every Sunday at 2 p.m. we have a live stream where we just cover some electric marine topics, anything that I found interesting that I saw online over the past week. And so today we are going to talk about solar boat racing. Before we get into it though, if you just got here, please hit the like button so that we can get this out to as many people as possible, because we do try to do a giveaway every time we do a live stream if we can get 100 people in the chat. Right now we're giving away the Milwaukee angle grinder along with a 5 amp hour Milwaukee battery. It's about a $200 value, great Christmas gift for a nephew or anybody who's interested in doing DIY boat stuff. That's kind of the idea. If you're interested in working on your boat, doing anything electrical, especially if your boat's made of aluminum, you definitely need an angle grinder. So it's a great holiday gift if you win it and want to gift it to somebody else. Or if you don't have an angle grinder yet, you can keep it for yourself. So let's get into today's topic, because I just came across yesterday or the day before a racing competition for college students that I thought was pretty cool. It is the oh, interesting. Here we go. It's the Monaco Energy Boat Challenge. And this thing is happening yearly, it looks like, in the summertime. And so they get college kids from across campuses all over the world to build a boat from scratch that they bring to the competition in the summer for that year. So the last one was in July of 2023, and they're taking signups for the 2024 version right now. And they have a few different categories, including an energy class, which I believe there is a sailboat class. I don't see it listed here though, but the big one that I'm interested in is the solar class, because there's solar starting to become a thing in the yachting industry, but it seems like solar is not really a thing yet anywhere else. We have covered some solar boats on the channel in the past, and I'm very interested in when solar becomes useful on boats in general and for marine applications, especially longer range, larger vessels, because we haven't really seen a lot of that yet. So if we looked at electric ferries last week, for example, and I don't know of a single electric ferry that's in service right now that uses solar panels, and I'm interested in seeing what the next generation of engineers is going to come up with as far as how we can put solar panels to use. Because there have been people using solar panels to circumnavigate the globe just as an experiment to prove that it's possible, but there's nothing really industrial happening there yet. And I think it's going to take a generation of young kids who are interested in exploring outside the box to make that happen. So this race is one of the perfect venues for them to explore the possibilities of what they can do there. But the challenge that we have is if we're not challenging these college kids in the right way, they may not get out of it the best information that they can to go on and use that use those learnings in the job force. So let's take a look at the details here. First, I want to just let you watch the 2-minute intro video. It's hosted by the Yacht Club of Monaco, and they have an interesting little promo video here. It's only a couple minutes long, so we're going to watch that for a few minutes.
What is the Monaco Energy Boat Challenge?
Futuristic.
Job opportunity.
Competition.
This is every engineering student's paradise.
It's fantastic. It's brilliant.
My favorite thing is all the environment that competition brings on.
The amount of innovation here is crazy.
The boats are officially in the water.
When times are rough, we try to remember that our most valuable asset is the people.
I like how all the teams are helping each other and assisting each other. Everyone is so friendly and just nice to each other.
There is people from all over the world.
UAE.
India,
France,
Germany,
Turkey,
Greece,
Portugal,
USA.
Canada.
Italia.
Being a pilot is a matter of promptness, readiness.
Drilling the boat is all about the team, while driving it is all up to the pilot.
I think they're a lot of fun. Actually, we've got some great competition this year, the Italians mostly.
And it's also an event where industry are involved.
And it's also about having fun.
This is Monaco, the capital of advanced yachting.
And it's lights out and away they go.
Just making sure my audio is back on. Okay, yeah, so the competition looks pretty cool, multiple categories. I really like the fact that they're challenging these college kids to put solar panels on a boat and see what they can do with them. But there's, I read through some of the rules for the competition, and I'm not sure that the rules are quite set up to allow these students to make the best use of their time when working on these solar panel systems that go on a boat, because based on what requirements you set for them, you could incentivize them to do things one way or another, and I'm not sure that the incentives are lined up well for them to focus on the right things when they're putting solar on boats. So let's take a closer look at that. But first, I just want to zoom in on the reason I came across this is because I found an article from the University of Louisiana in Lafayette, and they entered the competition. They're number 29. I think they took 13th place in 2023. There's I think 25 countries competing there were in 2023. Hopefully there will be even more in 2024. But 31 colleges from around the world, 46 teams. So each of the colleges, some of them only had one team, but some of them had multiple teams. So one of them would focus on solar, the others would focus on some other category, because they have just speed races. They had a slalom race, and then I think they had a course where they go out in the ocean. There's multiple different types of races you could enter into. But the thing with solar is, because I'm just talking about the solar category today, the other categories they have are also cool, but I'm mostly interested in what they can do with solar, because it's so rare and unique and hasn't really been done before. The question is yet to be answered, I think. Is it useful in an industrial way? So when you look at the requirements for the solar category, as far as I could tell, because I did see that they were using solar in the slalom races, and that struck me as a little bit strange, honestly, because slalom is where they zig and zag between the buoys, and you have to get through the obstacle course in the fastest time possible. By nature, it's a fairly short length race, right? You wouldn't want to do a slalom for 30 miles and then come back. So slalom, it makes sense for speedboats. However fast you can make your boat, fast and maneuverable, of course, that lends itself very well to a high-powered motor with a very light battery. And it doesn't lend itself very well at all to solar panels. So it strikes me immediately as, why would you even put solar panels on that boat in the first place? All it does is make it bulky and really kind of stupid looking. When the trouble with solar panels is, unless you have a large vessel, the solar panels determine the size and shape of the deck, because they're rectangular, and so they're not going to fit on a small, very aerodynamic deck. until you get the deck to a certain size. Then you can fit the solar panels within that deck. So a lot of these boats, you can see, like in this photo here, let me make sure you guys can see this. This entry from the Lafayette team, they have, I think it looks like a 10-foot boat or something like that. I think the total length limit that they were allowed to use was a 13-foot hull. But obviously you're allowed to extend the solar panels off the edge of the hull. So really the deck is determined by the panels, not by the type of hull. And that being the case, it's a very difficult thing to steer on the water if you're doing a slalom course. And so it just ends up looking a little bit like a clown car race, because you would never build a boat like that in real life, right? If the boat is that small, then you would just have to use fewer solar panels and admit to yourself that the amount of solar that's available on such a small deck is near useless anyway, so just don't even bother with the solar panels. So the idea of using solar panels in slalom at all is just it's a pretty silly idea, in my opinion. It's kind of like if you've ever seen the Red Bull boxcar racing, it's fun, but it's also kind of tongue-in-cheek. Like, this is not a serious race. And yet it seems like they're getting these college kids to treat it like it's a serious race when they could be spending their time on other solar implementations that are much more useful for the industry. If I were involved in this race as a college student, I'm an engineer, like I would be looking at it from a perspective of, I want to work on something that looks great on my resume when I get out of college, so that some boat manufacturer can hire me to actually build like a larger scale version of this in the real world for real customers. That's I think a large part of the point of all of this. But I don't see that as being a clear path when you have a small boat and you're trying to make it as fast as possible. To put solar on it at all is really just kind of a waste of time, unfortunately. And this is coming from a guy who loves putting solar panels on boats. I love doing electric propulsion projects, but they're with the wrong category and the wrong rules and the wrong requirements. You can really waste the time of these college students when they could be spending that time on more important things. So what's a better way to put the brain power of these students to use, putting solar panels on a boat? Well, it has everything to do, in my opinion, with a few factors: the size of the boat, the length of the course, and very importantly, I think this is the one they overlook the most, is the size of the battery pack that you're allowed to pair with the panel array. Because I looked through the rules and they are requiring no more than 10 kilowatt battery pack to go in any of these vessels. And that immediately struck me as, well, why solar then? Like, never mind the size of the vessel. That's just a small part of it, I think, compared to the size of the battery pack. And we'll look at why in just a second. But I want to look closer at just the implementation that these kids were able to come up with based on these requirements. Because you have to keep the boat less than 13 feet long, and you have to have a 10 kilowatt hour or less battery pack. And that, for just the two competitors that you can see in this photo here, you have, it looks like 9 solar panels on this boat and 10 solar panels on that boat. It's hard to tell if those solar panels are the same dimensions. It's very likely they're all using flexible solar panels to keep the weight down. And so just based on the number of cells I counted on each of these panels, it looks like they're probably using something similar to this 175 watt monocrystalline panel from Renogy. And, you know, who knows which brand they're using, but the number of watts doesn't vary in the extreme from one manufacturer to the next when you have the same number of cells. And so there's something in the realm of 175 watts per panel on this boat from Lafayette, and probably something pretty similar on that boat, except if you look close, depending on whether you go wide or long, you may be able to fit more or fewer panels in this class of size and weight. So the Lafayette team has 9 panels, and it looks like whoever this team is, number 26 over here, has 10 panels. I think the big question, if you're going to compete as a student in this competition, would be, well, how many solar panels can I fit, number one, but number two, does it matter if I have 9 or 10, or can I configure the system such that I can have fewer than that and still win? Those are important questions to answer. So let's take a look at, if you are a student and thinking about joining this race, what are the kind of logistics you're going to deal with from an engineering standpoint? I did a little diagram here just before I started the stream to illustrate what we just saw on those two boats. This is on the left here, the Lafayette team, and then this is number 26 over here. And both of them are required to have no more than 10 kilowatts of battery somewhere in the hull. And so this one probably has the battery pack back here because there's not much room in the hull for anything except the cockpit up front. This hull might look like it's wider than this one, but actually the hull is required to be the same design for the competition. The hull type and body shape is provided by the organization, and they have to build the hull from scratch at whatever length they want, under 13 feet. And so it's really what you have here is, because the nose to stern length of this one is shorter than this one, this boat is actually got a smaller beam as well. So I think they went with a smaller hull in general, so that they could keep the beam width as tight as possible, because that would hopefully create less drag in the water. And I'm sure you could experiment with any number of versions of this, where even if you have more than one hull, you saw a couple of those competitors had a dual vessel setup, a catamaran setup. And there's obviously, if you have two hulls instead of one, it's potentially more drag, but there's also the issue of balance. If you have panels hanging off the edge, how maneuverable is it? I would bet that if you have very thin hulls, very small hulls, but you have a catamaran, it's very stable on the water, and you can probably get more speed in that kind of hull type. Whereas if you go with one hull and you make it as long as possible to fit as many solar panels, the big question is that going to be valuable in helping you win the race? And that depends entirely on how you set the race up. So I think if you're in the solar category, as the creator of this competition, you'd want to encourage students to use lots of solar panels. But I think the way they've set the requirements up, it actually encourages them to use as few solar panels as possible. So why is that? It's because the size of the battery has an amount of energy that completely trounces the total number of solar panels and the energy they can provide across even a long-term race. So obviously, if your race lasts a half hour versus 6 hours, that's going to make a big difference in how much the solar can contribute. If it's sunny daylight with no clouds in the sky the whole time, you're going to get 6 times as many total watt hours out of your solar panels as you would if the race were just 1 hour. So the length of the race matters a lot, but it matters a lot less if you have a battery that's just immensely larger than the total amount of energy you could pull out of the sun in a day anyway. Based on the size of the craft, it has to be less than 13 feet. So if you use these 175 watt solar panels, you're not going to fit more than 12 of them on any vessel. And even if you try and fit as many as possible, it looks like whoever Team 26 was, they were only able to fit 10 panels, which comes out to less than 2 kilowatts total of continuous power. And that is assuming that you get 100% efficiency from your solar panels, which is impossible. So even if you have high noon sun hitting your panels at exactly 90 degrees, you're going to get something like 90 to 93-ish efficiency on those panels. So it's going to be closer to 1500 watts for this vessel on the right. And that's 1.5 kilowatts compared to 10 kilowatts that you have in your battery. And so at this size, if you're allowed to have a battery that big, why wouldn't you just use the biggest battery possible? And who cares about the solar panels? The solar panels are providing an amount of energy that's a drop in the bucket compared to the size of battery that you're allowed to have. And so, of course, the speed that you can go, if you're supposed to get to the finish line faster than everybody else, the speed that you can go is entirely determined by the RPMs you can put into the motor, which is determined by the kilowatt capability of that motor's input power. So whether you pull that from battery or from solar or a combination of both, your limiting factor is the total energy that you have available on the vessel through the entire course of the race. And if you have more than 90% of the total energy coming from the battery, then it feels like, is this really a solar race? Why are the solar panels even there? This is a battery electric vehicle race, not really a solar race. So I think the problem there is, even if students learn how to put solar panels on a boat during this race, that's nice, but it also teaches them, well, why would I ever? These solar panels are not needed. So why wouldn't you set the race up such that it requires them to be creative and strategic about how many solar panels they use and why they arrange them in a certain way? So for example, if the battery, say the course lasts a half hour, you can put a 20 kilowatt motor on the back of either of these boats and run the battery from 100 to 0 in exactly a half hour, and you don't need any solar panels at all. And since these solar panels at most at high noon would provide maybe 10-ish% extra on top of that, it feels like, well, because they're so bulky and they take up so much space, wouldn't it be better to just use as few of them as possible and structure the size of the motor such that it takes all the energy that those can use? So it seems to me it's likely, because this boat on the left got 13th place in the competition. It seems to me extremely likely, and I didn't look into this close enough to see which of the teams won. It sounds like Italy did very well, but I don't know if they got first place. The boat that probably won is the one that likely had as few solar panels as possible. If I were going to build a boat based on these rules, I would build a boat with one solar panel because it still qualifies as solar, but it's really, the panels are just window dressing at that point, right? You're really optimizing for the battery with the motor, and then you put a solar panel on it just to qualify to be in the race in the first place. And I'll bet you that's what the #1 contender for this race did, because the rules are structured such that it encourages you to get rid of as many solar panels as possible. When if it's the solar category, in my opinion, it should encourage you to put more solar panels on the boat. The trouble, though, is solar panels, and this very clearly illustrates that solar panels are not useful on small boats in general. And there are exceptions to that. But when we're talking about the propulsion system for that boat, the solar is not that useful at all, because it provides, for the surface area that creates a certain amount of energy, it provides such a small amount of energy compared to a battery, which can be in a lighter weight and a tighter size. It makes so much more sense with a boat this size to just add more batteries. But that's not to say that you would never want solar on a boat this small. So I see people in the Facebook groups asking about their John boats all the time. Should I put a solar panel on it so that I can recharge my batteries while I'm out on the lake? And the answer is, if you spend a lot of time not running the motor while you're out on the lake, so anglers, for example, will go out to their favorite fishing spot and then they'll cast lines for most of the day and they're not running the motor, then even one solar panel could help charge your battery back up to full. Maybe you only used 20% of it to get to your spot anyway, and then one solar panel might be able to give you that 20% back if you're out casting lines for 3 hours. That's a perfect situation to put a solar panel on your boat for. But the question of, if you are intending to use the solar for propulsion, does it make sense on a small boat? The answer, I think, is generally no. So it's good that I think we're getting these students' hands dirty, actually putting solar panels on boats. But I would like to see a competition where they're encouraged to build a boat that actually becomes useful in the real world one day. And that requires getting them into a category where the boat, it has to be larger so that you can utilize the amount of surface area that makes sense to put solar panels on boats with. So that the size of the battery is less important and the size of the solar array is more important. This is why, by the way, most of the time, if you're talking about propulsion systems, you don't see solar on boats except for rare instances in the yachting industry. And you only ever see it on catamarans because there's enough width and length, surface area, to put enough solar that it actually makes a difference in how far you can take the boat at a fairly slow speed. There's no such thing as a race boat that does that, by the way. If you look at any racing category, any speedboat in the entire world, if you're in competition, there's no such thing as one that puts solar panels on top of it because it would just be ridiculous to do so. It's a known waste of time. And in fact, even when you get to larger scale, it's still kind of a waste of time depending on the situation. So ferries we talked about last week, they never use solar panels because they have a known destination across a channel to two ports that they control entirely on both sides. And so it makes more sense to put shore power on both of those ports and just have a battery to take you between. Whereas if you try to do it with solar and forget about the shore power, it would take the panels so long to recharge the amount of energy they used crossing that channel that it's a loss of efficiency too great to justify the use of the panels. Even the cost of building the shore power, which is very expensive, to charge all of those batteries, it makes perfect sense in the long run when you compare that to the idea of, well, if I sent the boat across the channel and then waited for the solar panels to charge it back up, I'd be waiting all day or 2 days. So I'd have to have 5 or 6 times as many boats in the fleet in order to get them all charging on solar. And so rather than buying way more boats, you just place shore power on the shores and you're good to go, and then you don't need solar at all. So there's so many instances where solar kind of shoots itself in the foot by not having enough power for the surface area for it to make sense. And that'll only change when you get to a scale where the amount of surface area matters more than the amount of volumetric or gravimetric energy density the batteries can provide. So with ferries, you can put a really big battery in the hull of the ferry and get it across the channel if the trip is only an hour long. But let's talk a little bit about longer duration distances than that. Because, for example, with ocean freight, you've never seen electric in ocean freight at all before. Nobody builds it because we're not at a scale yet with electric propulsion that people have figured out how to accommodate that. It is really kind of impossible with batteries to go that distance because there's no such thing as a battery small enough to fit inside the hull of even these giant ocean liners that can carry 25 to 50,000 containers. If you filled that whole hull with batteries, the amount of energy they're burning in diesel to move those boats, that they would burn the whole battery out in 2 to 3 days. And these boats have to go across the ocean for 20 to 30, sometimes 40 days. So there is no such thing as a battery big enough to accommodate a vessel like that. And so then you would have to ask, okay, what about solar though? Because solar you can replenish over and over again every day. And the real challenge there is if you get to a large enough scale, the weight is scaling up as well. It's the same reason elephants aren't twice as the size they are. If they get twice as big, their body weight will be too heavy for their bones to handle. Similarly, if you make a boat big enough, no matter how many more solar panels you can fit, the weight of the vessel is going to make it go so slow across the water that the amount of power the solar panels can provide is not enough. So the only question there is there such a thing as a boat that has a sweet spot where it's big enough for a good sized solar panel array, but not so big that it doesn't make sense to power it with solar anymore? And that sweet spot does exist, and it starts right about the size of a large catamaran. And then I don't even know the upper limit of how big you can make a boat and put solar panels on it to power it across the ocean, because that's been done so rarely by the human race so far that we don't know what the limits are. I'm sure you can come up with all kinds of calculations to estimate what that's going to be, and I haven't done any of those calculations. Maybe we will do a little bit of that on the channel in the future, but there is a pocket of possibility there that almost nobody is exploring. And so if you're going to do a solar boat race competition, it seems to me it behooves you to get students to experiment in that sweet spot where the open sea of possibilities that nobody's touching yet is ocean crossing capability. And so I want to see a version of this race that's not just, go from checkpoint A to checkpoint B and then back again, and we do it in less than a day and we're all good. That's not really useful for testing solar on the water, in my opinion. The really useful thing for testing solar is multi-day trips across channels, across oceans, and make that a competition for college students. And obviously the scale of that would require more money. It's more difficult for people to participate because you'd have to get funding from somewhere. But when that happens, that's when we're really going to start to see innovations that break this barrier of, can we even do long-form cargo transport across oceans, or even just island hopping in certain locales in the world? That's the next step of what electric will be capable of in the future, and it's going to take the next generation of the college students, the younger end of Gen Z, and the Gen Alpha that's coming up right behind them. They're going to be the ones who figure all of this stuff out, because people my age they seem content to not even bother. I'm super interested in it, but I don't have the energy I did when I was a college kid, so I'm not going to go build a boat that big. But I'm hoping that somebody who's in these competitions realizes after they get out of college, there's nobody doing this yet, and based on the competition they put us through, they don't even understand that you have to build these boats a certain size to make them useful. So let's do a startup where we actually build a useful solar boat for the first time. And like I said, there are people doing that in the yachting category, but again, that's mostly not for propulsion. When they attach solar panels to a propulsion system, it's usually just like a pinch on the cheek supplement to a hybrid system where it's powered by diesel, but also could take a little bit of power through the solar panels. There's very few instances where the boat is fully intended to be powered off of solar and nothing else. And there's, I think, a lot we can do there to improve ocean transport, whether it's passenger transport, freight transport, doesn't matter. There's a realm of possibilities that is practically unexplored. And the reason we have races like this, I think, is to encourage students to go explore those possibilities. So I hope to see this competition get more popular, but I do feel a little bit like Monaco, the Energy Boat Challenge, could do a little bit better by changing the rules. A couple of suggestions I'd have for them. If you're going to keep the races short, intraday, stay in the same harbor type thing where you hit checkpoint, 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 and then come back. Make the batteries way smaller. If you're in the solar category, make the batteries like 10 times as small. That would encourage students to figure out what they have to do with the solar panels rather than with the battery. Obviously, you want a battery in the system anyway, no matter what, but if you have a really small battery, you can't rely mostly on that for the energy you're putting into the motor. You have to figure out how much energy during what time of day, whether there are clouds in the sky, am I going to get from this panel array, and how is that going to help me win the race based on the size of motor that I chose to pair with that rather than pairing the motor with the batteries. Get the batteries as much out of the equation as possible to get these kids' heads turning about what these solar panels themselves are capable of. That's my suggestion for this competition. And if you really want to take it to the next level, eventually when this gets popular enough, make a category where they have to make these boats bigger, because that's really when you're going to unlock the possibilities of what solar can do in the boating industry. So that's my 2 cents. I think it's a cool competition. I hope everybody who's watching this enjoyed the little overview. And if you have students, if you have kids in college or you are in college yourself and you'd never heard of this before, if you have any kind of engineering degree, I studied computer science in school. I would have been all over this. I would have loved to be in a competition like this. So whether you do computer science, electrical engineering, chemical engineering, whatever kind of engineering you're interested in, go over to the EE department at your college and show them this and say, hey, can we do this coming July? This looks like a lot of fun. And maybe you'll be the one to crack the code on making a new category where they're actually putting these solar panels to better use. So any college student, I wish you luck with that. I think we're going to wrap up with this topic for today. But I do want to circle back to the giveaway that we have running on the channel. We don't have enough people in chat to do the giveaway yet, but if you hit the like button, we'll hopefully be able to get this out to more people. If you have any questions for me, any thoughts you want to share on the topic, or you just want to let me know where you're hailing from, feel free and leave me a comment. But we are going to wrap up pretty soon. We got more videos coming on the Eagle Ray channel very soon. I'm working on a dual propulsion system with 2 trolling motors on the back of a small boat that I built from scratch, and more videos coming on that soon. And I'm also going to be adding solar panels to that boat in the near future. I got lots of solar panels I've been experimenting with. Haven't had a chance to shoot any footage for you guys yet on that, but that is coming in 2024. So I'm excited to actually get to some solar. I've been saying since the channel started almost a year ago that we're going to do lots of solar on this channel also. That is coming, I promise you. I just haven't been able to get to it yet. So many projects to get to. So we're gonna wrap up the live stream. I appreciate you watching. Hit the like button even if you caught it after the fact, so that we can get this out to more people next week. We'll do the giveaway as soon as we have 100 people in the chat. And until then, I hope that you're able to get out on the water. I think it's getting too cold, even out here in the Southwest, where it was plenty warm until the past few days. It got so cold that even I'm thinking maybe I'm going to pack it in for the winter and just talk about boats and pray for warmer weather in the spring where we can all get back out on the water. But whether you're able to do some sailing, fishing, whatever you've got going on or not this week, I wish you the best, and I hope you tune in next week so that we can get this giveaway going and talk about the latest cool stuff in electric marine. All right, have a good one, guys.